Alright, guys, chapter 7, part 6. That same day, but in the evening now, at around 7 o'clock, Raskolnikov approached the lodgings of his mother and sister, those same lodgings in Bakalayev's tenements that Razumikin had arranged for them. The entrance to the staircase led him from the street. Raskolnikov slowed his step as he approached, as though he were unsure whether to go inside or not. Not for any reason would he have gone back, however, his decision had been made. In any case, it doesn't matter. They don't know anything as yet, he thought, and they're accustomed to thinking me a bit strange. His clothes were in a terrible state, covered in dirt, having spent all night out in the rain. They were ripped and torn to rags. His face was almost disfigured with weariness, the effects of the weather, physical exhaustion, and his almost round-the-clock struggle with himself. All that night he had spent alone, God only knew where, but at least he had made his decision. He knocked at the door. It was opened to him by his mother. Dunya's was not there. Not even the servant girl happened to be around at the moment. Pulcheria Alexandrovna was at first speechless with joy and bewilderment. Then she seized him by the hand and dragged him into the room. "Well, here you are," she began, stammering with joy. "Radia, you mustn't be angry at me for greeting you in this stupid fashion, with tears. I'm laughing, not crying. Did you think I was crying?" "No, I'm overjoyed, but I have this bad habit of getting tears in my eyes. It's ever since your father died. The slightest thing makes me cry. Sit down, my dear. You must be tired. I can see it. Oh, how muddy you've got yourself." "I was out in the rain last night, mother," Raskolnikov began. "No, oh no," Pulcheria exclaimed, flinging herself towards him and breaking him off. "You thought I was going to start asking you questions in that old mother's way of mine. There's no need to worry. I understand everything. I've already learned to see things the way people here do, and I really do think it's more sensible. I've decided once and for all that it's not for me to try to understand all your reasons for doing what you do, or to bring you to account for them. God knows what deeds and plans you may have in your head, or what thoughts may be taking shape there. Is it for me to nudge your elbow and ask you what you're thinking about? Oh, merciful Lord, why am I rushing about like a scalded cat? Look, Radia, I've been reading your article, the one you had in the journal, for the third time now. Dmitri Prokofitch brought me it. I fairly gasped aloud when I saw it. What a fool I am. I thought myself, that's what he's doing with his time. That's the answer to the riddle. Men of learning are always like that. It's quite probable that he has some new ideas in his head just now. He's thinking them over, and I'm just bothering him and distracting him. I've been reading it, my dear, and of course I don't understand much of it, but that's how it's bound to me. Really, how could I expect to? "Show me it, mother." Raskolnikov took the periodical and gave his article a cursory glance. However much counter it ran to his present situation and state of mind, he experienced none the less that strange and mordant sensation an author feels upon seeing himself in print for the first time. In addition, his 23 years were not without effect. This lasted one single moment. Having read a few lines, he frowned, and a terrible anguish clawed at his heart. The whole of his mental and emotional struggle of the last few months suddenly came back to him in a flood. With revulsion and annoyance, he threw the article on to the table. "All I know is, Radia, that stupid though I may be, I can still see that very soon you're going to be one of the leading lights, if not the leading lights in our intellectual world. And they dared to suppose you were mad. Ha ha ha, don't you know? That's what they thought. Oh, the miserable worms. How could they ever recognize intellect? And Dunya also nearly believed them. What a terrible thing. Your dead father sent 2 submissions to journals. First some poems. I still have the notebook. I'll show it to you sometime. And then a whole novella. I asked him to let me copy it out for him. And then how we both prayed they'd be accepted, but they weren't. You know, Radia, 6 or 7 days ago I felt simply destroyed as I looked at your clothes, at the way you were living, at what you were eating, and what you were going around in. But now I can see how silly that was of me, because whatever you want, you'll now be able to get for yourself by virtue of your intelligence and talent. The explanation of all this is simply that for the time being you don't want it because you're preoccupied with far more important matters. Isn't Dunya here, mother?" "No, Radia, it's not very often that she is. She leaves me here on my own. Dmitri Prokofitch, and I'm grateful to him for it, looks in to sit with me for a while now and then. He's forever talking about you. He's truly fond of you, my dear, and he has such respect for you. As far as your sister's concerned, I don't want to imply that she's being really inconsiderate to me, or anything like that, I'm not complaining. She has her temperament and I have mine. Now she's got some secrets she wants to keep. Well, I don't have any secrets from either of you. Of course, I'm firmly convinced that Dunya is extremely clever and that, what's more, she loves both you and me, but I really don't know what all this is going to lead to. I mean, look how happy you've made me by coming to see me just now, yet off she's gone on some rounds or other. When she gets back, I'll say to her, your brother was here while you were out. Where have you been passing the time? Now, you mustn't spoil me, Radia. If you can, come and see me, but if you can't, there's nothing to be done, and I'll wait. For you see, I know all the same that you love me, and that will be enough for me. I shall read these literary works of yours. I shall hear everyone talking about you, and after a bit, you'll come and see me yourself. What could be better? Why, I do believe you looked in just now in order to console your mother. Yes, I can see it. At this point, Pulcheria suddenly burst into tears. Oh, it's just me again. Don't pay any attention to me, silly woman that I am. Oh, for heaven's sake, what am I doing sitting around like this? She exclaimed. After all, I've made coffee, yet I haven't given you any. That's what they mean when they talk about old women's selfishness. It'll be ready in a moment, in a moment. Mother, please stop. I'm going in a moment. I didn't come here for that. Please listen to what I have to say. Pulcheria timidly went over to him. Mother, whatever may happen, whatever you may hear about me, whatever people may tell you about me, will you go on loving me as you do now? He asked suddenly out of the fullness of his heart, almost without thinking what he was saying or weighing it over. Radia, Radia, what's gone into you? How can you ask such a thing? And who's going to tell me things about you? Why? I shan't listen to anyone, no matter who they are. I shall just chase them away. I've come to make it clear to you that I've always loved you and that I'm glad we're alone now, even glad that Dunya's not here. He continued with the same impetuous, impetuosity. Impetuous, but impetuosity. I've come to tell you straight out that even though you're going to be unhappy, you must always remember that your son now loves you more than himself, and that all the things you've thought about me, that I'm cruel and don't love you, all those things are false. I'll never stop loving you. Well, I said enough. I thought it was the right thing to do to begin with that. Pulcheria put her arms round him without saying anything, pressed him to her bosom, and quietly wept. Whatever's the matter with you, Radia? I don't know what it is, she said at last. All the time I've thought it was just that we were making you bored, but now all the signs tell me that you've some great trouble ahead of you, and that's why you're so miserable. I've seen this coming for a long time, Radia. Please forgive me for mentioning it. I think about nothing else, and I can't sleep at nights because of it. All last night your sister, too, lay in a delirium, and it was you she kept talking about. I managed to pick out some of it, but I couldn't make any sense of it. I spent all morning walking around as though I was going to my execution, waiting for something, and now here it is. Radia, Radia, where is it you're going? Are you going to make a journey somewhere? Yes, I am. It's as I thought, but look, I can come with you if you need me to. So can Dunya. She loves you. She loves you very much, and Sonia Semyonova could easily come with us too if necessary. I'd be glad to take her under my wing as though she were my own daughter. Dmitri Prokofiev will help us to make the necessary preparations together, but where is it you're going? Goodbye, mother. What, today? She exclaimed, as though she were about to lose him forever. I can't remain here. I've no time. It's very urgent. And I can't go with you? No. But you can get down on your knees and say a prayer for me. Perhaps your prayer will be heeded. Will be heeded. Let me make the sign of the cross over you and bless you. There, like that, like that. Oh God, what are we doing? Yes, he was glad. He was very glad that there was no one else there, that he and his mother were alone together. It was as though after all this horrible time his heart had suddenly softened. He fell down before her, he kissed her feet, and both of them, clasping each other in their arms, wept. On this occasion she was not even surprised, nor did she ask him any questions. She had known for a long time that something terrible was happening to her son, and that now some fearsome moment had ripened for him. Radia, my dear boy, my firstborn, she said, sobbing. Now you're just the way you were when you were little. That's how you used to hug me and kiss me back in the days when your father was still alive and we were struggling. You used to console us by the mere fact of being with us, and after I'd buried your father, how many times we used to weep over his grave, with our arms about each other the way they are now. All this crying I've been doing is just because my mother's heart was able to sense trouble in advance. The first time I saw you that evening, do you remember, when we'd only just got here? I fathomed everything by the look in your eyes, and my heart fairly missed a beat. And today, when I opened the door to you, I looked and thought, yes, it's obvious, his hour of destiny is here. Radia, you're not going away right this very moment, are you? No. Will you come again? Yes, I will. Radia, please don't be angry with me. I don't even dare to ask you any questions. I know I don't have any right to, but even so, can't you just tell me in a couple of words? Is it far away you're going? Very far away. What is it that's taking you there? A job, your career, or what? Whatever God will send, only you must pray for me. Raskolnikov walked to the door, but she caught hold of him and looked into his eyes with a desperate gaze. Her face was contorted with horror. "That's enough, mother," Raskolnikov said, deeply regretting that he had ever had the idea of coming here. "It's not forever. Say it's not forever. Say you'll come again. Come tomorrow." "Yes, yes, I will. Now goodbye." He finally managed to tear himself free. The evening was fresh, warm, and clear. The weather had brightened up since morning. Raskolnikov set off for his lodgings. He was in a hurry. He wanted to get it all over with by sunset. Until that time, he was anxious to avoid meeting anyone. As he climbed the staircase to his lodgings, he observed that Nastasia, having torn herself away from the samovar, was watching him closely and following him with her eyes. "I wonder if there's someone up in my room," he thought. In his mind's eye, he saw with loathing an image of Porfiry. When, however, he arrived at his room and opened the door, he saw Dunya there. She was sitting utterly alone. Utterly alone in deep reflection, and had apparently been waiting for him for a long time. He paused on the threshold. She raised herself from the sofa in alarm and stood erect before him. Her gaze, motionlessly fixed upon him, displayed horror and inconsolable grief. By this gaze alone, he could tell at once that she knew everything. "What do you want me to do? Come in or go away?" he asked her uncertainly. "I spent the whole day at Sofya Semyonova's. We were both waiting for you. We thought you'd be sure to go there." Raskolnikov entered the room and sat down on a chair in a state of exhaustion. "I don't feel all that strong, Dunya. I'm very tired, but at this moment at least I'd like to regain complete control of myself." He looked up at her with distrust in his eyes. "Where were you all night?" "I don't really remember. You see, sister, I wanted to make a clean breaking and kept going down to the Neva time after time that I remember. I wanted to end it all there, but I couldn't bring myself to do it," he whispered again, casting a distrustful glance at Dunya. "God be praised. That was the very thing we were afraid of, Sofya Semyonovna and I. That means you still believe in life. God be praised. God be praised." Raskolnikov smiled a bitter, ironic smile. "I've never been a believer, yet just now, as mother and I had our arms around each other, we wept. I have no faith, yet I asked her to pray for me. God knows how that can happen, Dunya. I don't understand it at all." "You went to see mother? You told her?" Dunya exclaimed in horror. "Surely you can't have done that." "No, I didn't tell her, not in words, but she sensed a lot of it. She'd heard the things you said in your sleep when you were delirious. I'm convinced she already half understands. It may have been a mistake on my part to go and see her. I really don't know why I did it. I'm a rotten person, Dunya." "A rotten person, yet you're ready to go and take your suffering?" "I mean, you are going to do that, aren't you?" "Yes, I am, right now. Yes, in order to avoid this shame, I wanted to drown myself, Dunya, but as I stood looking down at the water, it occurred to me that if I really still believed I was strong, then I oughtn't to be afraid of the shame either," he said, forestalling her. "Is that pride, Dunya?" "Yes, Radya, it's pride." A light seemed to flash in his deadened eyes. It was as though he took pleasure in still being proud. "And you don't think it's simply because I was scared of the water?" he asked with an ugly, ironic smile peering into her face. "Oh, Radia, that's enough," Dunya exclaimed bitterly. For about 2 minutes there was silence between them. He sat with his head lowered, looking at the floor. Dunya stood at the other end of the table, watching him in torment. Suddenly he rose. "It's late. It's time. I'm going to turn myself in now. But I don't know why I'm going to do it." Large tears were flowing down her cheeks. "You're crying, sister, but will you give me your hand?" "Did you doubt that I would?" She embraced him tightly. "After all, by going to take your suffering, you're wiping out half of your crime, aren't you?" she cried, squeezing him in her arms and kissing him. "Crime? What crime?" he exclaimed in a sudden fit of fury. "My killing a loathsome, harmful Laos, a filthy old moneylender, woman who brought no good to anyone. To murder whom would pardon 40 sins, who sucked the lifeblood of the poor, and you call that a crime? I don't think about it, and I have no plans to wipe it out. And why do they keep poking me from all sides with their crime, crime? Only now do I see clearly the whole absurdity of my cowardice. Now, when I've already taken the resolve to go to this needless shame, it's merely because of my own baseness and mediocrity that I'm taking this step, and possibly also because it may do me some good." As he suggested that, "Porfiry, brother, what are you saying? I mean, you have blood on your hands," Dunya cried in despair. "It'll do me some good," as he suggested that, Porfiry. Oh, so he was still speaking at that. That was a narrator, and then Porfiry walked in. Brother, what are you saying? I mean, you have blood on your hands," Dunya cried in despair. "The blood that's on everyone's hands," he caught her up, almost in a frenzy now. "That flows and has always flowed through the world like a waterfall, that is poured like champagne, and for the sake of which men are crowned in the capital and then called the benefactors of mankind. Well, just take a closer look and see what's really what. I wanted to do good at people, and I'd have done hundreds, thousands of good deeds instead of this one stupid action, which wasn't even stupid really, but just clumsy, as the whole idea wasn't nearly as stupid as it appears now in the light of failure. In the light of failure, everything appears stupid. By means of that stupid action, I hope to put myself in a position of independence, to take the first step to obtain funds, and then the whole thing would have been wiped out by the measureless benefits, relatively speaking, that would have been achieved. But look at me, I couldn't even manage the first step because I'm a bastard. That's the long and the short of it, but even so, I won't see it the way you do. If I hadn't failed, they'd have crowned me, but as it is, it's into the can with me. But that's wrong, that's utterly wrong, brother. What are you saying? Aha, so I put it in the wrong form, have I? Not in the correct aesthetic form. Well, I must say I don't understand why. Why is it considered more respectable to hurl bombs at people in a regular siege? The fear of aesthetics is the first symptom of powerlessness. Never, never have I seen that so clearly as now, and I understand my crime even less than ever. Never, never have I been stronger and more full of conviction than I am now. The color had fairly leaped to his pale, exhausted features, but as he uttered this last exclamation, he chanced to meet the eyes of Dunya, and such was the agony for his sake he met in that gaze that he snapped out of his trance in spite of himself. He sensed that whatever else he had done, he had made these two poor women unhappy. There was no denying that he was the cause of their woes. Dunya, dear one, if I'm guilty of a crime, then please forgive me, though if I'm guilty, it's out of the question for me to be forgiven. Farewell. Don't let's argue. It's time and more than time. Don't try to follow me, I beg you. I have another call to make. Just go now and sit with mother. I beg you to do that. It's the last and the greatest request I shall make of you. You must stay beside her all the time. I left her in such a state of anxiety that she may not be able to endure it. She may either die or go mad. So stay with her. Razumikin will be with you. I've told him, don't shed any tears for me. I shall try to be brave and honest all the rest of my life, even though I am a murderer. Perhaps someday you'll hear my name. I won't bring shame on you, you'll see. I'll show you yet, but for now, goodbye until we meet again. He concluded hurriedly, again noticing the strange look that had appeared in Dunya's eyes at these last words and promises of his. What are you crying like that for? Don't cry, don't cry. I mean, we're not parting forever. Oh yes, wait, I forgot. He went over to the table, picked up a fat, dusty volume, opened it, and took out a small portrait, a watercolor on ivory that had been tucked away between its leaves. It was a portrait of his landlady's daughter, his one-time fiancée, the girl who had died of a fever, the strange one who had wanted to go and join a nunnery. For a moment he scrutinized her expressive and delicate little face, kissed the portrait, and handed it to Dunya. You know, I also used to talk a lot about that to her, and only to her, he said reflectively. It was to her that I confided much of what subsequently came to pass in such an ugly manner. You needn't worry, he said, turning to Dunya. She no more agreed with me than you do, and I'm glad she's no longer alive. The main thing is that now everything is going to take a turn, a new turn. It's going to be broken in two, he cried suddenly, falling back into his leaden anguish again. Everything, everything. And am I ready for it? Do I even really want it? They say it's necessary for me as a trial by ordeal. But what purpose? What purpose do all these senseless ordeals serve? What purpose do they serve? And will I be any nearer the answer to that question later on, when I've been crushed by sufferings, by idiocy and senile helplessness after 20 years hard labor, than I am now? And what purpose will there be in my continuing to live? Why am I giving my assent to that kind of life for myself now? Oh, as I stood above the Neva this morning at dawn, I knew I was a villain. At last they both stepped aside, or they both stepped outside. Dunya found it hard, but she loved him. She went on her way, but having gone some 50 paces, turned round again to look at him. He was still visible, but when he reached the corner, he also turned round. For the last time their gazes met. But having observed that she was looking at him, he made an impatient and even annoyed gesture with his hand, telling her to go, and abruptly turned the corner. That was a nasty thing for me to do. I realized that, he thought to himself, feeling shame a moment later at the gesture of annoyance he had made to Dunya. But why do they love me so much if I don't deserve it? Oh, if I were alone and no one loved me, and I had never loved anyone, all this would never have taken place. But the interesting thing to know is whether in the course of the next 15 or 20 years my soul will acquire such humility that I shall whimper in reverence before other people, ready to call myself a brigand at the first opportunity. Yes, that's it. That's why they're sending me into exile now. It's that they want. There they all are, scurrying back and forth along the street, and I mean every one of them is a brigand and a bastard at heart. Worse than that, an idiot. But just try to get me out of my exile, and they'd all start foaming at the mouth with righteous indignation. Oh, how I hate them all. He began to think deeply about the process by which it might happen that he would finally, beyond all dispute, submit to them with the humility born of conviction. All right, why not? Of course, that's how it's got to be. 20 years of incessant hardship ought to be enough to finish me off, oughtn't they? Constant dripping, constant dripping wears away the stone. Constant dripping wears away the stone. And what's the point? What's the point of living after this? Why am I going there now when I know perfectly well that it's all going to go according to the book and not otherwise? This must have been the 100th time he had asked himself that question since the night before, but even so, he went. All right, that was the end of part 6, chapter 7. He's going to turn himself in. All right, this is the last chapter. Peace.